Hello, friends. This is Rekha Kurup, and I am continuing the conversation on trauma. And I feel like maybe this would be my last one. And for further, I would invite you to research more. And this last episode, I wanted to talk about developmental trauma. What is developmental trauma? So developmental trauma, I mean, there are very clearly defined, what should I say, criteria for developmental trauma. And when you look at that, you feel that I doubt if there's anyone today in this world who doesn't have at least one or two, because they don't say you have to beat everything. There is two, you meet two in this category too. And I think most people in the world, kind of fit into having developmental trauma. So developmental trauma is a word that was identified and is being spoken about and is influencing a lot of a trauma narrative today. And it was cognized by Bessel van der Kolk in his research. And I spoke in the earlier days about the ASEP study, which was a very huge data set of children who were from childhood through adult. They were actually monitored, a huge data set number, more than 10,000. And it was seen that even if, so they had a set of criteria, 6 or 7 out of that, even if 2 or more of those criteria were met in childhood, in some form of trauma, it showed that their chances of being having some chronic illness, addiction, all that shoots up. Yeah. So to understand developmental trauma, developmental trauma can be the early developmental trauma. The very core trauma is between the ages of 0 to 2 years, when our the cortical brain, or the thinking, the verbal brain, is really the conscious verbal thought brain, is not very active, is not fully online. Yeah, so it is pre-verbal trauma, is when it stays as visceral sensations in the body. Yeah, and it stays and it moves through adult. So when that can actually cause more situations of trauma in later years, right? And one of the very interesting thing that I heard Bessel van der Kolk speak, that if 0 to 2 years, that is from the moment of conception. Yeah, so it is that early, from 0 to 2 years, if a child receives attention, love, care, its needs are met, it doesn't feel neglected, it is seen. Yeah, if it has that kind of protective environment, and after that, if there's a dramatic shift in its life, there's some trauma, the child still has a better chance of coping with it. But if the first 2 years of a child is very traumatic, yeah, in the sense its needs are not met, it experiences neglect, or it is not mirrored love and care and acknowledgement, and it is not received fully for its birth and celebrated for in the first 2 years. If the child has a traumatic environment, then even after that, if the child gets the best care, there is already it is difficult for the child to cope with that, because our brain, brain development, I spoke in the previous videos, I spoke about brain developments, I spoke about the hierarchy of safety. So from birth through our first 9 months, it is our just primal, so it is our reptilian brain, the brain stem. So there's hardly anything much for the child. When the child is born, of course, there's the brain, but the brain has like millions of neurons, but they're not fired. So they're just there like a plain blank book, which now needs to be coded with information. So it's just there. And so the first 9 months, the child doesn't have much of cognition. Actually, there is no cognition, right? So the child is at the beck and call of all those around. And then 9 months to 2 years is when the mammalian, the social brain, part of the brain, the limbic system starts really coming online, and you will see the child starting to see things and wanting to hold things. So the mammalian aspect, and then comes after 2 years is when really it's not just speaking language, but also conscious awareness of its own thoughts, what it says, what it hears, how to respond, that is developed. And there's so much research today. Just because you are born as a human being, you don't become a human being. So the first 9 months, when the reptilian brain, just the brain stem, and so what is available? So it's the very primary need of the child. It's all housekeeping, right? We spoke about housekeeping. Just what does a child do in the first 9 months? The child needs to, it eats, it eliminates, it breathes, then it can experience anxiety. It really much, and it can respond. It responds to mirror neurons of being seen, of being loved. It can feel that. So John Pansep, I think Jack Pansep, he said that there are 7 primary emotions that are primary affects. Like, this are essential. This define us as mammals. And those are our need to express rage or anger. Those are primary emotions. Fear, anxiety, then panic or sadness, then seeking, exploration. This is part of the mammalian, and then care or nurture, lust. This what brings later on, it supports us to reproduce, connect with someone safely and bring another life. And play, social connection, play. So these are very core affects that are essential. So just as I said, just because a child is born, it doesn't become a human being. We are on our journey of reptilian existence, which is very hypo-aroused, frozen. That's very, helpless. If you see, the needs are very, very different. And then comes the mammalian, where you see the mirror neurons come into, you see the other, and by seeing the other and being seen by the other, we start coming into our own existence. So this is these two things. And then comes the human. Being human. Being human is a learned process. It has to be taught. It has to be mirrored. It has to be held. And it has to be allowed. And for that to happen, the child needs to have enough safety. As we said, the brain's primary role is to ensure survival. So if survival for that child between the first 2 years, the child is in situations where it is not seen. So even if the parents don't see the child, so the primary caregiver, so there is attachment trauma that can happen between 0 to 9 months. And what is attachment trauma? Attachment trauma is when the primary caregiver of the child, in the very beginning, it is the mother, who grows the child for 9 months inside her womb and then births the child. So it's not just in utero. Now there is enough evidence that once the child is born, Yeah, it needs to have the same environment of safety and protection that it had inside the womb. It needs that outside for at least 16 months. Yeah, so when after a child is born, it is still has to be an extra utero. So there has to be a uterine environment outside that really first 9 months, first 10 months, where the child is really cared for, the child and the primary caregiver. And for a child, even inside the womb, today we know that the child can feel. It may not cognize. What is available is this very early visceral sense. It knows hunger. It knows what panic is. It knows what, what fear is. Yeah, what fear is. These are the early ones. Fear or panic, rage. So these inside the child can still, it may not know these emotions, but it can feel despair, and it can feel it like in its body, the skin. Yeah. The skin is very, so in the housekeeping video I did speak about when I spoke about brain development, the early stages, so even when a child is born, when the child has to have the experience of being fully in love with. So that is created by the child and the mother, when the mother is breastfeeding the child. So today there's enough research which says that when the mother is breastfeeding the child, to look at the child, to look at the baby as she is breastfeeding, and the baby looks at the mother. Yeah, and we have seen some of those videos where the baby looks, a newborn baby also looks, and that locking that they have, and that feeling for both of them, it has to be mutual. I feel, you feel me. It has to be mutual feeling of being in love is how the baby his brain, all these sense of safety, survival, and that is what supports in the development of the brain in a whole way. That supports learning, that supports thinking, that supports sense of self and sense of space, sense of time. All these come later. But the first 2 years set the foundation for the child. So first it's the mother, the primary caregiver, and then there is the father. And now it is even it's so proven that just that is not enough for a human child. Because if you look at mammals, they are social. There are many, and if you see, even as cat, the way it will lick its child, its kittens, again and again, so they are forever cared for. Yeah, so if you see a kitten, you never see in nature babies dirty. If you, I am always amazed at that. They never have their shit sticking on their body, or they don't stink. Yeah, so especially those in the wild. Once they come in contact with humanity, I feel sad for them because. But otherwise, if you see cubs, even in wild, you look at tiger cubs, lion cubs, my God, they are so spick and span, clean, and that is a very mammalian thing to do, to really take care of the young, to play. And have you seen these qualities at the very early, how in mammals, the social play, they're fighting with each other. Then they, they can get angry. They get angry at the mother, and the mother lets it, and it still holds. If you see, it's just amazing. They'll be biting the mother, jumping so forcefully on the mother, and you would see especially feline, they would just be there and allowing that. They'll play with her tail. So these qualities, to fight, to have a fight with each other, to be able to express anger, and to be held and seen in that anger, to fear. Have you seen how kittens, they would see something fly, or, they don't even know that's something I would eat later. They would play, they would hold it, they would be afraid of it, and how the mother would support them and to, be there and say that, no, nobody, come on, play, I'm here. So, what is attachment theory? Attachment theory really says that this primary attachment to a caregiver is extremely essential for a child, for a human child to become human. Yeah, so that when it's time for its brain, the topmost part of the brain, so the brain development even from our birth happens step by step. Yeah, the first is the reptilian, and then comes the mammalian, and then comes thought, thinking, cognition. So these two have to be fully there online. Yeah, the limbic system, and that happens. That's the right brain part. That is our emotional brain. So to be seen in our emotions, to be held in our emotions, to be given this room to play in our emotions, to express our emotions, and the role of the primary caregiver, the family. It's not just two people, but it is said today that the more hands the child is held with love and rocked and sung to, and the more faces the child sees who encourage the child, who acknowledge the child for its being there, that all supports the child in a very unconscious way to later on have a strong sense of self, confidence, grit, resilience. Yeah. So the environment, the first 2 years, this is the most important thing to know, is that our environment creates our brain. So it's not just nature. That means it's not just DNA that we are born with. It's not just genome that we are born with, but the environment is what makes sure that the right genes and the right DNAs are fired, the right neurons are fired, and we have a healthy human experience. Yeah, healthy, safe human experience of exploration, to safely go and explore. So these qualities of exploration and every child. So every child has its own window of tolerance. No two children are the same. And we have seen that. So the parents also need to shift themselves for each child, and to see that every child's sensitivity and sensibility is very different. So how do you hold space for this particular child, and how do you support the child to come back into their window of tolerance? What is window of tolerance? Window of tolerance is when our heartbeat, something scares us, we have fear, we feel helpless, we can either go into complete the fight or flight, very scared, fearful, wanting to fight, angry, rage, and in that, how do we see the child? So when you see a child like that, how do you show up as a parent? Are you able to hold space? Are you able to calm them down and bring them back into the window of tolerance? And how much time does it take for the child? So danger, all this we learn, in the first 2 years of the child will experience all emotions. And how fast does it come back into homeostasis? Who is there to support the child to come back into homeostasis, or they go into freeze mode? So first the child will move into the fight or flight to survive and to protect itself. And if it is not, and this is after 9 months, okay, the 0 to 9 months, the child doesn't know to fight, and it cannot flee because it's not yet walking, right? So it is in the state of utter despair. So what trauma happens in the early, less than 2 years, or less than a year for a child, is complete numbness or helplessness. It is all in its body as visceral sensations, yeah? And it's still 5 years, the child, any trauma, if we lived in an environment where we were not seen and applauded, and our birth was not celebrated, or our parents had a lot of stress, and they were trying to make ends meet on a daily basis, and they had a lot of their own trauma that they are coming with, and they were not available for the child. So the child experienced neglect, and the child early on learns to take care of itself, or to not show. Like you cry, yeah, or you get angry because you want a certain way and you don't get it, or you want to be cleaned. because skin is very much, it's one of the earliest sensations, a change in temperature and skin. Yeah, so that tactile is very, very early. And if a child is not done that, or the parents are unable to show up for the child, then the child kind of gives up, and it becomes part of its personality that comes later on. So certain parts of a brain stop firing after, if our earlier emotional brain development is not complete, it does not support the development of the topmost brain. Yeah. And so that's why you might see adults who might be, who might have great brain power and they can think, they are great with logic, but emotionally they are not available, and there is trauma there. So every child, human child, is born towards. So this whole research, what it actually questions, what it really makes us start thinking is that if you're born into a privileged home, yeah, then the conditions of safety and basic needs and survival is not something as a child you would struggle with. There might be other things, yeah, and a child who is in an extremely volatile, traumatic, daily struggles, underprivileged, disadvantaged neighborhoods and communities. There is, even if their parents love them, yeah, there is only so much they are available because they are forever struggling to survive themselves. So for such a child growing up like that, its full development of the child's brain is compromised. So intelligence of a child, its ability to focus in a school, its ability to learn is not based on genome. It is not based on your DNA. This is what this research is proving. It is actually the environment, the early environment shapes who we become, our early environment. So then you see, if you go to prisons, who are the people who end up going to prisons? Majority would be people who are from a disadvantaged and underprivileged neighborhood. And many times what policies and systems and politicians and leaders would say that, these they are a risk. They are not. Or, how in India we have, we think certain people are intelligent and certain people are non-intelligent. It doesn't work like that. That is what research is saying, that even to have full access to our brain, our early environment, of survival is key. Yeah, so it's not just nature, it's nature and nurture. If nurture is not available, then doesn't matter. Yeah, your ability to really become a fully conscious human being who is able to cooperate, who is able to experience empathy and compassion, who is emotionally intelligent, who is able to self-regulate, who is able to experience connection and social engagement, even concepts of the higher experience, transcendence, higher consciousness, the deep sense of self, all of this gets compromised. So this is something so very essential to know, that that our becoming human is at the beck and call of our environment to a great extent. So how do we create those kind of systems? Does everybody in a society, just look around you, Does everyone who lives around you have that kind of environment and support of survival? Their basic needs. The human being's basic need is very different. To become a human being, just basic needs of food, shelter, and clothing is not enough. We need an evolved nest to become human. And this evolved nest needs to provide us, provide us way more than what we receive today. And this applies across the board. Yeah, it doesn't matter which culture you come from, which part of the world you come from. Being human being is a process that we really need to make it available to every single child, every single mother, every single parent, every single family in the world. And so when we don't have that, when we do not have access to that, then we experience, these get coded into our behavior. Because for a child, so Gabor Mate often speaks about authenticity and attachment. For a child, if the child's needs are not met, and it tries to express it, but the parents are really not there. They are struggling. There's so many other things on their mind. They have their own. So intergenerational trauma. Yeah, how they were raised and they were seen is how they would be present. So they already might be compromised in their ability, in their emotional brains. They might not have full access to their own emotional brain. So then they are not able to mirror it for their children. So in those moments, for the child, a child needs to survive for the first 5 years. As children, if you go back to yourself, you are completely at the beck and call of the adults in your life. To survive, you need support. You cannot do it on your own. So for a child, if it has to choose between its own intuition, its own needs, and that of the parent, what is it's going to choose? It's going to choose the parent. It's going to choose attachment, because the attachment guarantees and ensures its survival. So we have children who, as they keep choosing attachment, their own authenticity and intuition keeps going, becoming feeble. So it's like in India and in our country, these kind of narratives of attachment is so glorified. The child sacrifices everything for the parent. The child is like, many times children are had so that they care for the parent. Children are not born to have a independent go, there's this dialogue in this famous Hindi film where they said, "Ja, jeele apni zindagi." That is for one occasion, the father says, where she just wants to go and travel just for this one time. Okay, for this one time you go. It's not like that. A child comes to have its own movement forward, and when the child, even in early childhood, the child will say, "Oh, my parents have so much going on," and the child will keep not sharing. Like if I recall, I have had a wonderful childhood is what I always assumed, and I did in the sense, it was very safe in my home, very safe. There was never any beating, hitting, bad words. All my needs were taken care of food, shelter, clothing. But at the same time, emotionally, I don't think, somewhere early on, I felt that, I cannot emotionally show, like I cannot be angry, I cannot cry or be sad in my home, because I do not know whether my parents will be able to handle that, or they cannot handle. So I've been remembering that I have never cried. I don't know when I have cried as a child. I remember once in 10th grade, my marks, that's when I cried. And even then I closed my door because I was so worried for my parents. And grief. So then when I am not able to express my grief, it becomes a state of anxiety in my body. And that is how I experience in certain situations. I know it is unexpressed grief, unexpressed inability to cry and express sadness. And this is something I'm working with my own self, and even to fight. It's a great quality to be able to fight, to defend yourself and say, back off. I don't agree with you. I'm angry at you. To be able to do that is again something that I feel I have kind of lost, because it was seen as not something wonderful to have, or it was never. But all these are primary skills which allow me to be authentic. But when that expression is not allowed, when our caregivers are not able to hold space for it, to acknowledge it, and to show up in it, and to be there patiently. Like if you get angry as a child, if you are, and it's very normal for a child to be angry, to be sad, to experience fear. And if that parents already have trauma in their nervous system, so they go into their own trips of the fight, flight, or freeze response, then they are not there for the child. So there's nobody there to console the child, to see the child, to nurture the child. And that response, that causes an attachment. So the child will shut that part of itself. It will feel that, oh my God, I cannot do that. I shouldn't do that. It is not right for me to do that. So, and that later on as an adult in similar situations, because our primary caregiving, our primary relationships determines the way we show up in every other relationship in our life. And later on in our life, we feel that in those moments when we are not seen, when someone is not seeing us, honoring us, respecting us, our ability to stand up for ourselves and say, back off, how dare you say something, to do this becomes almost impossible. Yeah. Or to cry when something makes us sad, to just let the tears roll down, to allow that. Is such a beautiful quality, because it's a natural process. And to come back, you do that and you come back to your own self. So, this regulation, when we are not able to do that as adults, that's when we also start looking at there is some trauma. There is something, and that's when we start really asking. And we meet many people in our life. So my work, because I work with trauma, and with my work is around that, so I can no longer, I do not expect people to understand me or to be present for me. So as my journey of being an adult is of reclaiming my emotional maturity and learning to take care of myself. We do not even know what it means to be an adult. And I recognize trauma, when I am with people and I see how people are so lost in themselves. They're not able to see me because nobody saw them. Yeah, so they never received that, maybe even as a child. So they are not there. Yeah. And so we might, we have all these terms that we might say, they're such negative people, or, I would stay away from it. It's fine. But the journey of also becoming an adult is to hold space for that, to see their own. If someone is triggering us, that means, or if someone is not able to see us or honor us, to be able to say that, hey, I don't like that behavior. I don't like that, you've just been talking and talking. You've not let me speak my piece. You don't even, I could just walk out of this room and you'll continue talking. Like you won't even know that I've walked away. And I have so many people I meet that way, especially in India. I've seen this so much, to have this movement of conversation. It's not even what you speak. It is to be able to see each other and to see when the other has shifted, and how do you shift this conversation. And how do you know that the other person is already checked out? So how do you say, hey, I'm sorry, to go there? But we don't. People don't see this at all, And so those are all trauma. There is trauma. So my role is to recognize that. Yeah, I don't expect anybody to. I have no longer that expectation from people to understand me, to be there for me. I can be there for myself. So I don't have that expectation. But I would like to experience that kind of connection. And I'm very grateful that I have some friends like that with whom we can mirror to each other our vulnerability and to be held and seen fully in that with no words, in our likes and our dislikes, and to be held in that and to be heard and listened, even when we don't maybe see eye to the situation, but to still feel each other in our feeling. The minute you can feel each other, I think so much of you experience connection. Yeah, it's not about understanding, and I feel more and more from understanding we need to start moving into experiencing each other. That is the need today, because we cannot really understand, because our brains have been shaped so differently. But how do we move into that space of emotional mirroring? And to have that, and many people cannot do that because of their own trauma. And so how do you show up there? How can you hold space so they can regulate, they can come back? And that is being an adult. And it's not just because you don't have to be a therapist, but I think we all in the coming decade can start becoming emotionally mature adults. The journey of an adult is not shutting off people, but it is to be there and mirroring connection and supporting the other to move there. That is, if we all could move into being emotionally mature adults, if we all were given that opportunity, I don't think spaces like therapy and this are even needed, really. It's because the world is full of emotionally immature people. Yeah, so we immediately move into our own defense system. So we are not able to move into homeostasis. And so it's just developmental trauma is a real thing. And we all, I refuse to believe, that we do not have developmental trauma. First of all, we don't even understand what trauma is. We do not even realize it as a child to not be seen in who we are. Yeah. And what in our own knowing, to be honored in our own knowing, even if you are a 6-month-old baby. We don't even think that's even needed. If a child is in an incubator, or if the mother is experiencing distress with the child in the womb, we don't even think that can have an effect on the baby. It does. So can you speak to the child? And I feel it is so much the responsibility of the parent to ensure the child that what I am moving through, this is mine, this is my anger, my inability to show up for you does not mean I don't love you. We need to keep telling our children or ensuring a child that if I'm being strict with you, because we have to be, we mirror boundaries for the children. Yeah, because today I think there's this open parenthood. You let the child do anything. That doesn't create human beings. To create human beings as parent, you need to model boundaries to your children. You need to model discrimination in the sense what is right, what is wrong, what is ethical. Or this connection with nature. These are things that a child learns. A human child has to be taught and learned. It doesn't come by default. By default, we are on the journey of becoming mammals and reptiles, not human beings. Human being is a taught and a learned movement, is a mirrored movement. It cannot even be taught. Actually, it's mirrored. The mirror neurons, you as adult, and all the adults around us. Yeah, so a child's movement is limited many times by those adults the child has around them. So we can never blame an adult, because what happened to you in your childhood? Who was there for you in your childhood is a question we need to start thinking about. And even when you are firm with your child, even if you do not have control over your emotions and you throw your anger at your child, to immediately go back to your child and say, I'm so sorry, that was my shit. You don't have to worry about me, I can take care of myself. Yeah. So parents have to become more conscious. They have to do their own work of becoming adults. Your child cannot be your source of joy. Of course, we will receive joy from the child, but they cannot be your source of joy. So don't have a child so that you will get happiness from the child. That is not why a child is here. A child is here to be given joy. The child is here to receive. Yeah, otherwise, at a very early age, the child has to give. That's not why a child is here. And that completely shifts the child's and they become adult, their entire world view gets completely compromised. Yeah. So these are some things. I mean, I'm seeing it's 40 minutes, so it's a very long video on developmental trauma. But I think I'm maybe going to make one more specifically for India and developmental trauma in India, because it is so rampant in India. It is so rampant. Even in the best households, it is rampant. It is there because we are so entrenched. We are so caught up in spiritual rules and shoulds and good behavior. All these, we ourselves do not know what being authentic. We have compromised our authenticity at a very early age, because we think parents are the last word, so we have given so much of, we say parents are God. So for a child, imagine that. What does that mean? For a child, its intuition anyway has no much importance. Many times, even in many of our stories, we have children who sacrifice everything. Yeah. And, for who are taken from. So much. And then as adults, there's such things that happen, of all our narratives of war and stories. You would look at the characters and you see, my God, they could never fully experience their own sense of autonomy and authority. And I think that is something that on our land, that really needs to be spoken, that really we need to make room for a child from birth to, we have all of it. We have even the best that today's research is showing. We do have it written, but we have not really known how to see it or how to really embody it and to live it. So I'm going to make another video on developmental trauma in India, but it won't be part of this series. So this is something that I invite you to understand how your childhood trauma, and it can be changed. Yeah, it can be shifted. We learn as an adult to hold for it and to recognize it and to not be driven by it, but to give it room, to grieve, to find ways to express that suppressed rage, and to find our own movement in all aspects of our emotions, and to be able to express it, to respond to it, to stand in it, to receive it, even from the other, to mirror it, and to play. And play is such a quality. I think we have all forgotten play. Yeah. How do you do play? So that's all for today, and hope this opens up some thought processes for you, and blessed be.